All rise. The courtroom stood as Judge Ronald Harrison entered. Robe billowing, smirk already in place. He scanned the room with casual indifference until his eyes landed on the defendant. A tall, black man in worn jeans and a faded hoodie stood calmly at the defense table. No lawyer beside him. No briefcase. Just a cheap spiral notepad and a ballpoint pen. Harrison arched an eyebrow. You're representing yourself? The man nodded once. Yes, Your Honor. The judge chuckled, shaking his head. This ought to be quick. The gallery snickered. A few whispered jokes passed between court staff. One bailiff leaned over to a clerk and said he looks like he just wandered in from the bus stop. The prosecutor, slick-haired and smug, stood to deliver his opening remarks. Your Honor, this case is simple. The defendant, who has opted, quite boldly, to waive his right to counsel, was caught trespassing on private property. Video footage confirms it. Witnesses confirm it. We're here out of formality. The judge didn't hide his amusement. Well, then, Mr. Defendant, he said, almost theatrically, what say you? The man stepped forward slowly, flipping open his notepad. I'd like to clarify a few things before we proceed. Judge Harrison raised a hand. Hold on. First things first. State your name for the record. Marcus Reed. Occupation? A brief pause. Unemployed, Marcus said flatly. The judge grinned like he'd just won a bet. Of course. Snickering echoed from the gallery. Someone stifled a cough that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. Marcus returned to his table. Calm. Silent. The first witness, an older security guard, took the stand. He testified that Marcus had been found wandering near a restricted warehouse late at night. Didn't seem to belong, the guard said. Didn't seem to belong? Marcus repeated, rising to cross-examine. Judge Harrison sighed. Do you have a relevant question, Mr. Reed? This isn't a social commentary forum. I do. Marcus stepped closer to the witness box. What exactly about me didn't belong? My clothes? My skin? Or the fact that I didn't run? The guard stammered. The prosecutor objected. Judge Harrison sustained it immediately. Stick to the facts, Mr. Reed, the judge snapped. We're not here to entertain conspiracy theories. Marcus said nothing. He just returned to his table, scribbled a few notes, and waited. Court recessed for lunch. As the room emptied, a teenage boy near the back turned to his father and whispered, I don't think he's what they think he is. The father frowned. Doesn't matter. That judge already made up his mind. Back at the bench, Harrison leaned toward the clerk. Bet you $5 he folds by tomorrow. The clerk chuckled. I'll take that bet. But as Marcus quietly flipped another page in his notebook, there was something in his eyes, focused, calculated, that no one noticed. Not yet. Court resumed with Judge Harrison already in rare form. He adjusted his robe like a king preparing for sport. Mr. Reed, he said with exaggerated patience, you may now call your next witness if you understand how that works. Snickers rippled through the courtroom again. Marcus didn't respond. He stood and calmly called the property owner to the stand, a balding, impatient man named Mr. Laskin. Marcus approached the witness box, notepad in hand. Mr. Laskin, are you aware that the gate to the warehouse was unlocked at night? The prosecutor immediately rose. Objection, Your Honor, irrelevant. Sustained, Harrison said without even looking up. Marcus nodded slowly. Noted. He tried another angle. Did you post any signs indicating restricted access? Laskin waved his hand. It's obvious. Anyone with common sense would know they don't belong there. Marcus raised an eyebrow. So it wasn't posted legally? Laskin hesitated. Objection, argumentative, the prosecutor barked. Sustained again, Harrison said, smirking now. Mr. Reed, you're treading water. Just trying to clarify, Your Honor. Well, don't. This isn't a law school exam. Keep it simple if you can. The audience chuckled again. Someone whispered, this guy's out of his depth. Marcus turned back to his table without a word. Next came Officer Daniels, the arresting officer. The moment he took the stand, Judge Harrison perked up like he was finally about to hear something credible. Officer, the prosecutor began, what did you observe when you arrived on the scene? Daniels launched into his report. The suspect was standing near the back exit of the warehouse. I asked for ID. He refused. He got defensive aggressive. Marcus stood slowly. Aggressive? Yes. Verbally confrontational. Did I raise my voice? You, refused to answer questions clearly. Marcus flipped through his notes. Did I physically threaten you? Touch you? Make any sudden movements? Daniels hesitated. Not exactly, but your posture was tense. Marcus looked at the judge. So we're criminalizing posture now? Objection, the prosecutor snapped. Commentary. Sustained, Judge Harrison barked. Mr. Reed, if you're trying to win points with the gallery, you're wasting our time. Understood. Marcus turned back to the officer. Did you tell me why I was being detained? I didn't have to. You were on private property. And when I asked to speak to a lawyer, what did you say? Daniels shifted in his seat. I told you could request one at the station, but I wasn't arrested yet. More murmurs filled the courtroom. Objection, the prosecutor shouted. Sustained, the judge snapped again. Mr. Reed, if you keep playing games, I'll hold you in contempt. Marcus paused, looked around the courtroom, slowly nodded and sat down. As the session wrapped for the day, Judge Harrison leaned back, clearly pleased with himself. Court adjourned, he declared, gavel tapping the bench like a drumbeat of finality. We'll continue this circus tomorrow. People filed out, laughing and chatting like they'd just seen a comedy show. But the teenage boy in the back, same as before, watched Marcus closely. He's letting them think he's losing, he whispered to his father. The man frowned. What makes you say that? The boy leaned in. Because every time they mock him, he listens. And every time they lie, he writes it down. The father glanced back at Marcus, still seated, calmly flipping through his notepad. I think he's waiting, the boy said. Waiting for the right moment. The father didn't respond, but his eyes lingered on Marcus a second longer than before. The next morning, the courtroom atmosphere was light. People shuffled in with coffee cups and small smiles, expecting another easy win for the prosecution and more verbal slapdowns from Judge Harrison. Marcus Reed sat quietly as ever, same old hoodie, same calm demeanor, still scribbling in that beat-up notepad. Judge Harrison gave him a dismissive glance as he settled in. Mr. Reed, he said with mock generosity, ready to continue your one-man show? Yes, Your Honor, Marcus replied, standing slowly. I'd like to recall Officer Daniels to the stand. The courtroom perked up with curiosity. Harrison raised a brow. You sure about that? You've already cross-examined him. Poorly, I might add. Marcus didn't respond to the jab. He simply nodded and waited. Daniels returned to the stand, clearly annoyed. Didn't we do this yesterday? Marcus opened his notepad. I just need to clarify a few points. He approached slowly. Officer Daniels, you said I was near the back exit of the warehouse. Yes. And that I appeared tense? Daniels nodded. Marcus flipped a page. Would you agree that someone standing still, hands visible, and speaking calmly is not exhibiting signs of aggression? Well, that depends on context. What context would that be? My posture or my skin color? A murmur spread through the courtroom. Objection, the prosecutor shouted. Sustained, Judge Harrison said sharply. Mr. Reed, I warned you. Understood, Marcus said smoothly. Let me rephrase. He walked over to the evidence table, picked up a printed still from the security footage and held it up. This is me, correct? Yes. In this photo, where are my hands? By your sides. Am I moving? No. Was I carrying any tools, bags, or suspicious items? Daniels sighed. No. Were there any signs of forced entry? No. Yet I was still arrested. Daniels shifted. You matched a vague description from an earlier call. Which was? A tall male in dark clothing. Marcus let that hang in the air. Then he turned to the judge. So, Your Honor, am I to understand that being tall and wearing dark clothes is now grounds for detainment? Mr. Reed, Harrison began, but Marcus kept going. One last thing, officer. When you filed your report, you claimed I was evasive. Can you explain what questions I refused to answer? Daniels blinked. You didn't give your full name right away. I asked if I was being detained first. Then I gave my name. Daniels opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Marcus gave a tight nod. No further questions. He returned to his table as silence settled over the room. Even the prosecutor sat stiffly, jaw tight. The gallery, once laughing at Marcus, now watched him with new eyes. Judge Harrison leaned forward. Mr. Reed. Marcus looked up. You're either playing a very clever game or you know more than you let on. Marcus tilted his head slightly. I thought I was just a man who didn't belong here. The judge blinked, caught off guard for the first time. As court recessed, the young boy in the gallery nudged his father. See? He's not losing. He's leading them somewhere. The father nodded slowly, his gaze locked on Marcus. And for the first time since the trial began, Judge Harrison didn't look amused. He looked unsettled. The afternoon session began with an uneasy quiet. The judge sat a little straighter, the prosecutor a little stiffer. Marcus Reed, still dressed in that same unremarkable hoodie and jeans, was suddenly being watched very differently. But he hadn't changed a thing. Mr. Reed, Judge Harrison began cautiously, do you intend to call any more witnesses? I do, Marcus replied. But first, I'd like to submit a motion to dismiss all charges on the basis of unlawful arrest, false testimony, and procedural misconduct. The prosecutor shot up, laughing in disbelief. What? Your Honor, this is absurd. The defendant doesn't even, he's not licensed to a. On what grounds are you submitting this motion? Judge Harrison asked, voice cold. Marcus reached into his notepad, pulling out a folded document. The grounds are all listed here, including video stills, discrepancies in the officer's body cam footage, and a sworn statement from the warehouse's night manager who was never contacted by investigators. The courtroom went still. You somehow got a statement from the warehouse manager? The judge asked slowly. Marcus nodded. He's here, in fact, waiting outside, willing to testify under oath. The prosecutor's jaw clenched. This is ridiculous. This man is not an attorney. He's playing dress-up in a courtroom. Marcus looked over, expression unreadable. Would you like to verify that, counselor? I don't need to. The court record says he's representing himself because he has no counsel. Marcus calmly walked to the evidence screen, plugged in a USB, and brought up a PDF. This, he said, is a letter of resignation I submitted 6 months ago to my previous firm where I served as a senior trial attorney for 5 years. Gasps rippled across the room. The judge narrowed his eyes. What firm? Marcus smiled faintly. That's not relevant to the case. But if it matters, yes, I have a license to practice. 2, in fact. I graduated top of my class from a highly reputable institution. My credentials are up to date and I'm more than qualified to stand here. You're an attorney? The prosecutor muttered. Took a break. I wanted to see something for myself. I got my answer. Judge Harrison's lips parted slightly. Why didn't you reveal this sooner? I wanted to observe how this court treats someone it assumes is defenseless, Marcus said, eyes locked on the judge. And I have. You mocked me, dismissed me, allowed testimony full of holes. All because I wasn't in a suit. The gallery was dead silent now. Marcus turned to the judge, holding his gaze. Now, Your Honor, would you like to proceed with the motion, or shall we continue pretending this is justice? For a moment, Harrison said nothing. Then, motion will be reviewed. The prosecutor leaned toward him, whispering furiously, but the judge waved him off, still staring at Marcus like he was trying to reprocess everything he thought he knew. From the back row, the teenage boy's mouth hung open. He's a lawyer? All this time, his father let out a low whistle. Not just a lawyer, son. That man might be the sharpest one in the room. Marcus walked back to his table and sat down without fanfare. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He simply flipped to the next page in his notepad, like everything was going exactly as planned. Because it was. By the next morning, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Word had spread. Whispers of Marcus Reed's surprise identity reached even the parking lot. The gallery was packed with more onlookers, reporters scribbling notes, and law students peeking through the doors. Judge Harrison entered, noticeably more restrained. No smirks, no mocking. He adjusted his robe in silence and gave Marcus a subtle glance, this time without the contempt. Mr. Reed, he said formally, you may proceed. Thank you, Your Honor, Marcus replied, standing with calm precision. I'd like to call the warehouse night manager to the stand, Mr. Elgin Moore. An older man in a blue work jacket stepped forward, eyes wide, hands slightly shaking. He was no polished witness, but he had something real to say. Mr. Moore, Marcus began. Were you working the night in question? Yes, sir. Been there 23 years. Did you see me that night? Moore nodded. You asked me questions about building access policies. Said you were looking into how security gaps could lead to profiling. The courtroom shifted. A few people sat forward in their seats. And did I break any laws? No. You asked permission to walk the perimeter. I said yes. Marcus turned to the judge. So, the person I was allegedly trespassing against gave me permission. The prosecutor leapt up. Objection. This was not disclosed in discovery. Because the arresting officer never followed up with the property owner, Marcus shot back. Nor did he mention that in his report. Judge Harrison held up a hand. Enough. Objection overruled. Continue. Marcus nodded. Mr. Moore, did anyone from the police ever contact you? No, sir. Not once. I only heard about the case on the news last night. Thank you. No further questions. The prosecutor stood to cross-examine, but Marcus beat him to it. Actually, Your Honor, I'd like to move to admit Mr. Moore's testimony and accompanying signed statement into evidence. Granted, Harrison said, glancing at the prosecutor, who stood frozen. The gallery erupted in hushed murmurs. It wasn't just that Marcus had poked holes in the case, it was that everything the prosecution had built was unraveling. Marcus stepped forward again. Now, before I rest my defense, I'd like to show a brief clip from Officer Daniels' body cam. The screen flickered to life. The courtroom watched in real time as Officer Daniels approached Marcus that night, calm, polite, hands visible. Then the audio played. Marcus, am I being detained? Daniels, not yet. But you don't seem like you belong here. Gasps filled the courtroom. Marcus turned off the clip. No laws broken. No probable cause. Just assumptions. The prosecutor began to rise, desperate. Your Honor, none of this changes. Judge Harrison cut him off, voice low. Sit down, counselor. He turned to Marcus. Do you wish to make a closing statement? I do. But I'll keep it short. Marcus stepped forward, facing the judge and jury directly. I didn't come here to win a case. I came here to expose a system. One that doesn't ask who you are, it decides based on how you look. I didn't need to wear a suit for you to respect me. You should have done that from the start. He turned to the jury. You were told I was a trespasser. A threat. A man who didn't belong. But everything I said has now been verified. And I did it while being mocked, doubted, and silenced. Marcus looked back at the judge. I rest my case. He returned to his seat. And this time, not a single person in the courtroom was laughing. The courtroom sat in a tense, electric silence. No more giggles. No more smug whispers. Just the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock and the sound of deep breaths being held. Judge Harrison, once so confident, now looked like a man walking a tightrope with no net. He cleared his throat and glanced at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence has been presented. You will now retire to deliberate. The jury filed out, casting uncertain glances back at Marcus. No longer the man they thought they'd been watching for the past few days. Now he was something else entirely. A man they had underestimated. 25 minutes passed. Then 30. Then 45. Finally, the bailiff returned, face unreadable. The jury has reached a verdict. Everyone sat up. The foreman stood. In the case of the state versus Marcus Reed, we the jury find the defendant not guilty on all counts. An audible exhale swept through the gallery. Marcus simply nodded, eyes forward. Calm. Judge Harrison's lips pressed into a tight line. Mr. Reed, you are free to go. All charges are dismissed. But Marcus didn't move. He stood slowly and turned, not to leave, but to face the judge directly. With your permission, Your Honor, I'd like to address the court one final time. Harrison hesitated. Then, with a tired nod, he waved his hand. Proceed. Marcus stepped forward. I stood in this courtroom and watched how quickly assumptions became fact. How easily credentials were ignored, and how eagerly truth was buried beneath bias. And not just from the prosecution, but from this very bench. Harrison's face stiffened. You mocked me. You didn't just doubt my skills, you doubted my humanity. You saw a hoodie and assumed ignorance. You saw black skin and assumed guilt. The room was dead silent. I'm not here for an apology. But this courtroom should be a place where justice is blind, not where it's blindfolded by ego, prejudice, or outdated ideas of who belongs and who doesn't. He paused. I may walk out of here free. But there are thousands who won't because they don't know the law or they don't have the tools to defend themselves. You'll never see them in a suit. But they deserve justice just the same. He turned and walked back to his table, picked up his notepad, and left the courtroom without waiting for permission. The room remained silent, stunned by the calm destruction he had just delivered. Judge Harrison stared down at the bench. For the first time, his courtroom didn't feel like his kingdom. It felt like a spotlight had been turned on and there was nowhere left to hide. Outside, reporters swarmed the steps, flashing cameras and shouting questions. But Marcus didn't stop. A journalist called out, "Mr. Reed, why did you keep your identity secret?" He finally turned. "Because if I walked in wearing a suit, this wouldn't be a story." And with that he walked away. Not like a man who had just won, but like a man who had just proven something far more powerful. Back inside, Judge Harrison still hadn't moved. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving him alone at the bench, surrounded by silence, exposed by truth. And for the first time in his career, he wondered how many other Marcus Reeds he had dismissed without ever knowing. Had been 3 days since the verdict, and the video clips from the courtroom were everywhere. TV networks debated it. Social media exploded with hashtags like #MarcusReedTrial and #TheHoodieLawyer. The body cam footage, the cross-examination, and most of all, the moment Marcus revealed his identity, it was viral now. Over 12 million views and climbing. But Marcus? He wasn't on a press tour. He wasn't signing book deals or giving interviews. He was sitting at a small cafe in the neighborhood where he grew up, hoodie on, coffee in hand, reading a local newspaper like nothing had happened. No fanfare. Just peace. A teenage boy approached slowly, nervously clutching a school folder. "Mr. Reed?" he asked. Marcus looked up. "Yeah?" The boy stepped closer. You really a lawyer?" Marcus smiled faintly. "That's what they say." The kid hesitated, then pulled out a folded citation from his folder. "I got stopped last week. For walking too slow across the street. They gave me this." Marcus took the paper, scanned it, and then looked the boy in the eye. "Meet me here tomorrow after school. I'll show you how to fight it." The kid grinned, hope lighting up his face. "For real?" "For real," Marcus said. Across the city, things weren't so calm. Judge Harrison sat in a closed-door ethics review meeting. The panel of senior justices played clips from the trial on a projector. His mocking tone. His laughter. His scorn. That kind of conduct, one of them said dryly, wouldn't be acceptable in a high school debate club, let alone a courtroom. Harrison, still visibly shaken, didn't respond. For once, he had no clever words to hide behind. "You've had complaints before," another added. "But now the public has seen what we've long suspected." Back at the courthouse, the prosecutor, still reeling from the embarrassment, had filed for early transfer to a different district. Quietly. No press release. No goodbye party. And the police department? They launched an internal investigation into Officer Daniels' report. Body cam footage didn't lie, and neither did Marcus's cross-examination. Daniels was placed on administrative leave. A spokesperson gave a statement full of scripted words like protocol review and departmental integrity. But everyone knew the truth. The city was scrambling to clean up the mess Marcus left behind. Yet to Marcus, it wasn't about revenge. That evening, he walked into a local community center where a crowd had gathered for a free workshop. A woman greeted him. "You really coming back every week?" Marcus nodded. "As long as they'll listen." He stood in front of a group of teenagers, old heads, single moms, and young men with folded citations and public defender slips in their hands. "Here's what they don't want you to know," Marcus began. "You don't need a degree to know your rights. You just need someone to show you the game." Hands went up. Questions poured in. Marcus answered them all. Patiently, passionately, powerfully. Later that night, as the crowd thinned, a reporter found him outside. "You've got people calling you a hero," she said. "Others say you embarrassed the system." Marcus looked out at the street, then back at her. "Good. Maybe now the system will think twice before embarrassing someone like me again." She smiled. "Any plans to return to law full-time?" He shrugged. "I'm already doing the work. Just not from behind a desk." As the city lights flickered behind him, Marcus Reed walked off into the night, not as a lawyer looking for applause, but as a man who knew the law was only as powerful as the people who dare to use it. And now a whole community dared to believe because of him.